Thank you. Please be seated. Right. Bear with me. Where's the script? Right. Good afternoon, everyone. So, firstly, welcome to all participants in this meeting of full council. I am Councillor Dr. David Willingham, Mayor. The meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and we'll welcome any members of the public who are watching the meeting remotely. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years. Welcome to everyone in the public gallery. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation, and the footage and recordings will be held by the Council for 5 months. You should also note that a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the fire alarm does sound, you should make your way to the nearest exit immediately. Right, moving on to agenda item number 1, which is apologies. So I have apologies from Councillors Beale, Chandler, Garcia Clamp, Councillor Smith and Councillor Took, and apologies for lateness from Councillor Pemberton. Jen, are there any others that I need to record?
Councillor Sankey is in Melbourne, so I think...
Sorry, you'll need the microphone.
Councillor Sankey sends her apologies.
That's easy enough. Right, agenda item number 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any members with interests to declare? I am not seeing any. So agenda item number 3 is the minutes of the last meeting, which is the extraordinary meeting held on the 17th of November. So are there any amendments? Not seeing any hands. Can we confirm this by a show of hands? So those in favour of approving the minutes? Thank you very much. Any abstentions? I'm abstaining as I wasn't here, so I will sign those. Right. Agenda item number 4 is communications from the Mayor. So I will start with I'll start with one hopefully happy announcement. I'm just getting it on my phone. So I've been asked to thank Council and Council officers who've supported the box appeal for run by Dave, who won our Medal of Honour at Saracens, and the Christmas selection boxes, which make such a difference to areas like St Peter's, the Moors, St Paul's. I think, given he won the Medal of Honour for Cheltenham, the work is continuing, and we're requested to pass on our thanks to officers. I also want to now some rather more sombre news. Obviously, the events on Bondi Beach will be in the mind of all of our Jewish communities, not just in Cheltenham, but across Gloucestershire and across the globe. And I think, as someone who during Interfaith Week went to Cheltenham Synagogue to partake in Shabbat, I can understand why those communities are in such pain. There is no place in Cheltenham, no place in Gloucestershire, and no place in the globe for anti-Semitism or any hate crime based upon someone's religion, someone's creed, someone's colour, any protected characteristic. People should be living in peace. And all of the religions of the world preach peace. And we need then to be not these terrorist attacks in the name of religion, which preaches peace, especially at such a precious time, the approach on the first day of Hanukkah, which will have been such a tragic and just awful event for the Jewish communities. From the bench, I stand with them. There is no place for this hate, and I am sure the Chamber would stand with me as well. And then we have a sad event closer to hand, which is the loss of our Deputy Chief Executive, Paul Jones. So if I can ask, I will ask members who would like to pay tribute if they would like to speak. And I will start with group leaders or their representatives. So, Marina, are you? Sorry. Yeah, sure, of course.
So as you all know, I've been on the council for less than 2 years, so my exposure to Paul was not as long as it has been for some of you. But every single time I had a question, he was always really happy to answer. He was always really polite and really patient with my own sort of lack of knowledge around things. And I know that he was Jan's buddy, and I know that Jan really appreciated his presence, and I appreciated the fact that Jan had someone to lean on. And yeah, he'll be really missed.
Thank you. Marina?
Thank you, Mayor. So I first met Paul in 2002 when I was a newly elected councillor. At that time, I then took on the role of the Cabinet Lead for Economic Development, Leisure, Old and Young People and Tourism. So very diverse portfolio. Paul was my lead finance officer then, as a mid-30s, I think he probably was then. And he taught me absolutely everything I now know about local government finance. He taught me to go through my spreadsheets and be accountable for the budgets that I had overall ultimate responsibility for, to understand them and to challenge them and not be afraid to challenge. Local government finances are incredibly difficult. When in 2016, I took responsibility for the finance and assets portfolio, which was one I really wanted to do, I was acutely aware of all the diminishing money that this authority was getting from central government. And I said to Paul at the time, what we need to do is become a commercial council, which to most people would look rather odd, because what councils do is they deliver services for people. But in order for us to be able to continue to deliver those services that our residents absolutely rightly treasure and pay for, we needed to do something different. And that's all the steer I needed to give Paul, was to go away very excited and say, yep, that's what we're going to do. And to a large extent, or in fact to a greater extent, that is why we are where we are now, because we wouldn't be if we hadn't done that commercialisation journey. What I do know about Paul is he was an individual wholly committed to Cheltenham, acknowledging risk, but with a very clear mantra, is that we need to be risk aware, but absolutely not risk averse. Paul was an utterly trusted advisor. He was also pragmatic, alongside challenging where he believed it should happen. And he would say things, when you said you wanted to do something, he would say to you, well, da-da-da-da-da, but at the end of the day, that's a member's decision. And that's when you knew that it was like, okay, I'll do as you ask, but think about this. Paul absolutely, for me, personified the important things in life: family, friends, community, and our town. I have to say, on a personal level, I'm not sure where I'm going to get my racing tips from, because Paul was an absolute avid race fan, and he was quite successful when he laid a bet on that. But the simple pleasures will be a lasting memory for me, as a reminder of what Paul was, even though a passion for Cheltenham and therefore never not working. I just say thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Rowena. Are there any other members? So I've got Councillor Jeffreys, Councillor Baker, Councillor Telford, Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lots of ways you can do, lots of ways and words you can use to describe Paul. Kind, compassionate, resilient, exceptionally talented in local government and all the machinations of it. I mean, the list could be endless and we could all describe him differently. There's one area, I think, where you could describe Paul where I didn't really think about until after the news of when he's left us, and I started thinking about him more and more and my relationship with him. Because I first met him in 2010, I was a fresh-faced councillor. Crikey, that was a long time ago now, it feels ages ago. And I wanted to understand local government finance. And at the time, as being the chief, not the actual S151 officer, but I was pointing in that direction, and I had a 2-hour meeting with him, and I left absolutely none the wiser. I really didn't have a clue. I coming from a private background, I really could not get my head around local authority financing. But that wasn't a barrier at all, because Paul spent a lot of time, a lot of effort. Like I say, he's very resilient and he's very kind. And slowly but surely, I started to actually understand local government finance, as well as all things local authority, to be fair. He did have this unique ability to inspire people, support people, and help people, without them even realising he was doing it, you know? And I reflect on my time of knowing Paul and my relationship with Paul, and I know that I probably wouldn't be half, if not a third of the councillor that I am without his intervention, his support, and his kindness. I'm going to miss him terribly. Paul Jones is my friend. Thank you, Paul.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you. Paul epitomised the very best that local government should be. He was an incredibly hard-working and professional officer and leader. He looked for answers and often looked outside the box. He was cheery, he was positive, he was devoted to our town, and strove for the very best outcomes for us all. The one outstanding quality for me was that he gave me confidence that our town was in safe hands. He will be hugely missed. I would love to think that in some way his legacy could be remembered with an award, for nobody else has given more to Cheltenham in the service of Cheltenham Borough Council than Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Tailford, then Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the things that I always think of is whenever, you know, out campaigning, knocking on the doors and things like that, the one thing I'd always say before as a councillor and since becoming a councillor that always impressed me about the council was how well run our finances were, because we managed to achieve so much with such a small amount, and whenever, you know, the administration wanted to do X, Y, and Z, it would happen, and you go, wow, how is that actually genuinely possible when you look around? And I think you can attribute so much of that to Paul because he just made sure that we could. And he made sure that the various different people that have sat in Pete's seat over the times could do what they wanted to do. And it's clear, speaking to my officers, before and now, how many things they would just run by Paul and just check in and go, actually, let's see what Paul thinks of this, because he'll know what the right way forward is for all of that. And I think one of the things that will stay with me is when we needed money to support the Playhouse, and obviously 25 grand's a big number for that first tranche. And we were like, we need to do this for a multitude of reasons. You know, it's our building, but more importantly, it's a great community organisation and it's an amazing asset for local people. And we said, we need to do this. And he went, yep, fine, I'll make it happen. And when we needed the second 25k tranche and he was off having treatment, he made sure John Whitlock had all the information he needed to get that done for us as well. And I think that is a testament. And I think all I'll say is councillors and MPs, you know, come and go, you know, officers change throughout the years, but Paul has been here throughout so many administrations, so many different councillors, and I think you can reasonably say he's probably done as much for our town as anyone else, so I think that's really, really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's actually quite an honour to be able to stand and do this. And the reason it's an honour is because for those of us who worked with Paul, who knew Paul, we knew what kind of guy he was. He wasn't just a tick box officer. He was a man who could see what a thought, what a change, no matter how slight, could mean to the people of this town. And I'm drawn particularly to what happened just before COVID, when, as you will know, Pete, No Child Left Behind was begun. And during COVID, when people across this town, the elderly, the isolated, the disabled, the infirm, the children involved with No Child Left Behind, when they all were able to get help and assistance from this council. They wouldn't have been able to do that without the work that Paul had done and did do all the way through. He was, I'm going to say this after 40 years' experience as a councillor in one place or another, probably the most intelligent, the most feeling, the most determined finance officer I have ever met. He believed in what he was doing and what was good for this town. So, Paul, rest in peace and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Flo. Are there any other members that would like to speak? Councillor Lewis and then...
Paul Jones was, I think, more than anything else, one of the absolute greats. I remember once coming into another council group who were just taking over a council after a Conservative administration had bankrupted their entire authority, and they were looking at us and they were saying, wow, look how incredible things are, how you can pay for all these things you want to do. We want to do that. And I said, well, a lot of that is down to Paul Jones, and Paul's ours and you can't have him, which I think remains something that in so many ways resonates through all the conversations we're now having in his rather sad absence. There are so many times where you think, I wonder what Paul would think, or, oh God, I've just emailed Paul, and then you go, okay, I'm having to work basically on the principles and the good advice that he gave us in the time that he was with us. And in so many ways, they were the best piece of advice you could have had. When I started out as cabinet member, I think it would have been fully understandable if Paul had taken one look at me and gone, you know what, the Maldives look nice this time of year, I might retire early. But Paul, he took it with so much stride. He really did make the time every single Monday, without fail. We used to meet up and we'd sit through the finances, and I'd have read through yet another spreadsheet about what did you make of it, and I go, I'm not sure about this, and he'd look at me. And he'd look at his laptop, and he used to lift his glasses to look at his laptop, which is always something I miss so much about him, because that's when he knew he was being serious. And he'd turn to me and he'd go, let's see what we can do. And he'd get that calculator out. And I think there will be so many times over the next few years as we head into LGR and so many opportunities that we're be looking at where I'm desperate to have Paul and his calculator sitting next to us, because there was no balance sheet he couldn't balance, there was no project he couldn't deliver, and there are so many things all around Cheltenham you might not even know about that Paul played some small, very important, very magical part in making happen. I mean, I couldn't be more grateful for him, the time he made for me, the time he made for so many of us. And in many ways, it's terribly sad that LGR is coming the time that it is, because it would have been spectacular to see what the Paul Jones plan for Cheltenham's finances would have been and how it would have panned out. But I think the Golden Valley and all these incredible projects that he did make possible by making the numbers work will be the best legacy I think he would have ever asked for. And we're very, very grateful to have had him.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. What lovely things we've heard from people, but I was waiting for someone to say what I was going to say, and no one has yet, so you're going to have to hear it from me. I'm smiling, not because I think it's funny, because I had a scale and polish this morning, okay, and it was really expensive. I wonder if Paul would have advised me on that. But what I would say about the man, he was a lovely guy, he was a funny guy, and I can't remember a time when he's been in a room with me and we've been talking about finances where I haven't gone, that's a good idea, why don't we do that? He was so insightful, he'd think out the box and he'd come up with these ideas to save us loads of money or do things differently, which I think is a wonderful thing to have. But the one thing that I remember him for, above everything else, was when I was looking after the Golden Valley development, we were sitting in, I think it was the Pitfall room, and we had a problem. And somebody came up, we had our development partners in the room, and we had other people there, and somebody mentioned the words, we've got to consider the Cotswold Beechwoods. And nobody knew what it was. No one had ever heard of it before. And the one person in that room who stood up and started talking about it was Paul Jones, because he'd got on his phone and he'd researched what the Cotswold Beechwoods were, and he was going, you know what, lads, you're going to have to consider this because it's something we need to do. So all the development people, all the planners that were in that room, all the money people, no, it was Paul who came up with, you've got to think about the Cotswold Beechwoods. And now it's sort of etched on my brain, the Cotswold Beechwoods, and I hope that one day it goes away. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say about the man. Great guy, and he'll be sadly missed.
Thank you. Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Chair. Paul was such a fantastic officer and was always there for me whenever I had any questions throughout the various portfolios that I've had. And he was just so kind with how he gave his support, whether he sort of kindly disagreed with you or supported something that you really wanted to achieve. There was numerous times he's accepted meetings with me on some perhaps wacky ideas, and he has listened, given me the time to listen to them. And I'm just very grateful for his you just know that his kindness just shone through, and that you could bring him anything and he wouldn't think you were stupid. He was always ready to listen. And, even when we are at our election day at the count, and he's there sort of steering the way, and it's just, he's just been great through and through, and it's going to be sorely, sorely missed.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, I wasn't going to say anything because there's a number of people have said things. As you know, I've been on the council now for quite a few years, and I can always remember every year when it came to the budget, we had John Rawson, and I thought with John Rawson, the council's in good financial hands. And then John Rawson decided he wasn't going to do it, and we had John Webster do it for us. And I thought, oh yes, we're okay, John Webster can do this job. And then there was a number of Councillor Hay, and now Councillor Jeffries doing the job. And it would be very easy for us to think, yes, Liberal Democrats know how to run a good council. The truth of the matter is, and no offence to members here, but I think the truth of the matter is, as Councillor Hay said at the last meeting, we had Paul Jones, and he is the architect of our great standing. And I can remember making the comment at County Council on one occasion when every year when the budget came, it was balanced by selling off the rural estate. And so I got up and, okay, I did try and take credit and suggested they had a word with Councillor Hay about how to run the budget. But the truth of the matter was, as I say, with no offence to Councillor Hay, it was Paul Jones that was actually the architect of our, I think, great financial standing in very difficult times. So, but apart from that, he was a lovely guy. he'd always stop and smile and speak to you in the corridor. He was always there. He wasn't what a lot of people think of as finance people, because finance is not something that I can handle. But he was, it wasn't dry with Paul. It was his job, and he did it extremely well. And I think Cheltenham will really miss Paul, even though we have still got some really good officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Joy.
My cousin actually works at Westminster Abbey, which is kind of amazing, but I was visiting him on the day that Ashley called me and told me that Paul had passed away. And there's actually a section on the upper floors where you can actually look out to see Parliament, the Houses of Parliament, and in some ways I think it was a fitting place to think about Paul and really reflect on everything he meant to us, because there's so many memorials there of people who committed so much to their communities over hundreds of years, like 1,000 years, and I'm just really glad that I was there in that moment. I think. Sorry, I feel a bit overwhelmed. I really hope that other people can maybe visit the Abbey someday and think about Paul. He may not have a memorial there, but he was really precious to us and really important to our town. Sorry. Yeah, I just feel that he wasn't necessarily acknowledged in the way that maybe he deserved, but I'm really glad that everyone appreciated him so much, and I'm really glad that we can talk about him today. So, sorry, I feel like I'm being really overdramatic, but no, I'm really glad we got to do that. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Are there any other members that would like to speak? I'm not seeing any hands. So, from my point of view, I worked with Paul behind the scenes on a few things, mainly in COVID. The work that Paul did in getting me a spreadsheet of the businesses in St Peter's that were likely to be entitled to COVID support actually helped keep several businesses afloat and keep people that wouldn't have otherwise been aware of their entitlement to actually get it through the knowledge of an officer in terms of the businesses that we had, a little bit of work by councillor at a time of national crisis, but it was Paul that gave the information to make that happen. He was also the returning officer at our elections, one of the few times when you actually saw the man doing what he did rather than just the outcome of all the work. And I think it's worth remembering, elections are only newsworthy if something goes wrong. Otherwise, people are elected and the world moves on. If they go wrong, everybody knows about it. But Paul managed all of the polling stations in this town. He managed crises, including the closure of the Umbrella pub, which was being used as a polling station, and the contingency work. And he did all of this so well. So I just want to say, on Thursday we paid our final respects to Paul Jones, our deeply respected Deputy Chief Executive, who was taken from us far too soon. And it is a mark of the love felt for him by his colleagues that so many people stood outside these municipal offices, many of them in Christmas jumpers, because we know he loved Christmas jumpers. And they stood there, and I believe they applauded as the funeral cortege passed by. Some of us were in the church service at the Church of St Gregory the Great, and the church was full. I don't think there was room for anyone else in the church, and that shows again how much he was loved. Paul's legacy to the town includes many, many major projects, anything that touched large finance, so MX, Golden Valley, Delta Place, our other land ownerships. And the final thing I would say is the Minster Church, which and the rector of Cheltenham provide ministry to this council for mayors who are a member of the church family. And I know that Paul will be in their prayers as well. So could I please ask all those who are able to, for us to stand for a minute's silence in memory of Paul. I think we're at a minute. So please be seated. We are going to take a 5-minute recess so that members can, I know this will be something for members who just to recompose themselves. So we're just going to take a 5 thank you for your forbearance with the recess. Please be seated. Right. So, we now move on to agenda item 5, which is communications by the leader. Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Mayor. So, since we last met, all of the submissions for local government reorganisation have been submitted, and we now await the government's decision later next year. What will happen in the next 6 months is a huge amount of work preparing for their decision in order to be ready for one of either 2 unitary or 1 unitary councils. But in the meantime, it's important that members remember that we will be delivering and working on our CBC corporate plan. So business as usual. I actually thought I'd like to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about our communications team in this. They're often the silent partner that is really important to what this council does. Because good communication is a two-way engagement. It's central to the delivery of all our services and priorities. It's critical to local government's future successes, particularly as we move forwards to a new model for council services. This year, our communications team have very much focused on delivering communications that have directly supported the priorities in our corporate plan, further investing time into our digital platforms with rich and varied content, including increased video and photography. It's seen our engagement with local residents and tenants increase considerably, with a rise of 1,500 followers on Facebook this year alone, bringing our total following up to 10,000 followers, and that's just on Facebook. A new account on Nextdoor and the development of a local community Golden Valley Facebook page demonstrates the team's commitment to explore new and evolving ways to respond to the changing needs of our organisation and residents and the ever-changing communication landscape. I can't begin to keep up with it, but many young people do actually much more engage with it now. I talk about our award-winning LinkedIn account, which enables us to network and engage with businesses, partners and various different sectors, as well as supporting our recruitment efforts with 11,000 followers now connected to our page. I realise that not everyone's can access online platforms, and this year our comms team delivered a rebranded magazine to all of our 4,000 tenants to ensure they are informed and engaged about our redesigned housing service. Our relationship with the local press is also a valued part of our communication service, and through openness and transparency, we know our media partners will hold us to account. The journey of the communication team continues to build, and at the heart of their efforts is their passion and commitment to open up conversations, show innovation, commitment and creativity, and to demonstrate that as a council we will listen and we will act. Please do look at our space on the intranet, as it was known then, to see the full year's report, because there's lots and lots of statistics in there that will show you just what the reach that our comms team has. But we'll also be sharing some of the highlights of that on our LinkedIn. I know that Tabby's not in the room at the moment, but I was going to say to her, welcome back, Tabby. And also, my last bit, Mayor, today really is to just say a massive thank you to all our CBC officers for their commitment all over 2025. And I wish them and all of you a very happy Christmas in whatever way you choose to enjoy the holiday. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Rowena. Right, we now move on to agenda item number 6, which is to receive petitions, and no petitions have been received. So we then move on to agenda item number 7, which is public questions. We will take the answers as read, and then for each question, the questioner gets a supplementary to the cabinet member if they wish. So it's a bit difficult to see you in the gallery, clearly, but first 2 questions are from Tim Harman. So the first one is to the leader. Tim, do you have a supplementary? I do. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Could I just first pay my own brief tribute to Paul Jones? I worked with him as an officer. I remember him starting, and he was such a great guy. When I was a councillor and group leader, his professionalism was outstanding, and he was a great asset to me and great asset to the whole council. He was also a very good cricketer. And on one occasion, I captained an officers' team against the councillors, and I took a catch off Paul's bowling. I'm pleased to say that we thrashed the councillors. But he was a great guy, and I'd only say his loss is heartbreaking, mostly for his family, but certainly for me and for Cheltenham as well. So coming on now to the question, I have got a supplementary, and I thank the leader for her answer. I understand that Lotheringham is in a state of flux, it has to be said. Would she agree with me, though, that in any consultation that takes place about a potential town council, that it is important to say that it is absolutely open to the members of the public that that could involve an additional precept, another tax level, above and beyond that which they might pay to any unitary council. So, for example, in Parkhold, where I live, currently not parished, every household could potentially pay an additional level of tax.
Councillor Hay.
I think I'll actually answer that by saying that actually I can't confirm that one way or the other at this moment in time, because simply we've done the first tranche of consultation, as I informed this council at the last council meeting, and that we will, that information has been assimilated. We're now putting together in the new year to go back out to full consultation as to what was proposed. So I can't tell you whether there will even be any more parishes or any more town or a town council indeed. So to try and speculate that there will be and what that precept might be, as my original answer says, it is too early to tell.
Thank you. And do you have a supplementary to the second question?
No, it's a very good answer. I thank the Cabinet member for his answer. And on behalf of the Ducks, can I say that I'm sure they'll be much happier to have a little bit more water under their flippers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Telford, do you want to say anything, or are you happy with where we are? Oh, sorry. I've got too far down on my... yeah, Paul, sorry. Do you want to say anything?
I wasn't expecting to have that opportunity, but...
Just to say, Tim, thank you for your kind words about Paul as well. And I'm sure the chamber here agrees with you on those. Question 3. Do we have Elliot in the chamber? Yes. Okay. Question 3.
Right. First of all, thank you to both Paul and Richard for their replies to my initial question regarding Balancing Pond. A concern I had was they said in both their answers that the initial meeting when this all started was in 2024, and I'm wondering, is that a typo? Do they actually mean November 2025? And if 2024 is correct, Sandy, it wasn't a typo, what's taking so long?
Richard?
Thank you for your supplementary, Elliot. It's not a typo, it is correct. I think if you read the answer carefully, the matter is outside the control of the council, and it's actually for yourself and Councillor Baker to deal with outside of this meeting. It's not it's between the Vistry Group and the residents.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary to question 4?
Yes, I do, and I thank Richard again for his answer. I'm sure you'll be sick of me asking these questions very soon. So broadly, I actually support most of what you outlined in your answer. I know a lot of people in this room are environmentalists, so largely we're all on the same page with regards to a lot of that. But what I'm worried about, certainly with regards to the transition into the new government, or the new model of local government, apologies, is I'm very concerned that some of these smaller projects that you outlined could get lost in the nether realms of, going from something relatively small to much larger. So what reassurances can you give me, and I'm sure other members who are listening to me and people listening at home, that those smaller projects are going to be remembered, they're not going to be lost, and what large-scale projects could we potentially look forward to regarding the environment as we're going to be moving to a larger county scale? Thank you very much.
Richard?
Yeah. Thank you for the supplemental. I cannot answer what will happen because there will be a shadow authority between now and when the eventual authority is set up. But I can reassure you that everybody involved in this is doing their utmost to put things in place that will persist. So there's Climate Leadership Gloucestershire are working very hard and believe that that will probably go forwards with a new authority, but then it's the decision of the new authority. And also these local area energy plans, which are for, controlled by the central government and will hold even with the new authority. So we're doing all of the things we can. Also, the community energy scheme that is being supported by the current government, that obviously I can't say they will keep that going forward because it is a central government scheme, but hopefully that will be supported as well.
Thank you. So we move on to question 5. Is Jill Hewlett in there? Don't think so. No. Question 6. Rich Newman. Do you have a supplementary for this one?
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
Oh, sorry, I don't know. The microphone never works for me. Councillors, Mr Mayor. Councillor Collins, firstly, I thank you for your answer to my question. According to Article 3 of your response, any Cheltenham Borough Councillor could choose to call into the Planning Committee any planning proposal. Given this, regarding the proposal concerning the Bell Inn on Bath Road, keeping in mind the large public support for the Bell last time, the petition and the news coverage, why did no councillor here decide to call it into committee? In particular, the 2 College Ward councillors who were contacted by myself and others in the campaign.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Rich, for your original question and for your supplementary question. I had my fingers crossed then that you weren't going to mention the Bell, because once you mention a specific planning application, it's very difficult for me to answer because I can only answer in general planning terms. What I would say to you is that, yes, my answer to your original question was quite technical and high level. I would say, I must point out that all planning applications are considered on their own merit, and any decisions made, whether by a planning case officer or by a planning committee, must be fully compliant with the current planning legislation. I can't obviously answer why a local member, whether it was a local ward member or any other member, decided not to call in that application. You would have to address that directly to them. Okay? Thank you. Oh, and by the way, I'm glad they turned the lights on because I couldn't see you earlier.
Thank you. And now we move on to question 7. Do you have a supplementary for that one?
Do not.
Okay, thank you very much. And then question 8, we move on to Emma Nelson. Do you have a supplementary to question 8?
I do, thank you, Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Thank you to the Cabinet member for her answer. Our previous MP launched the Cyber Vision for Cheltenham and secured millions of pounds from central government, thus enabling the SLP to include Cheltenham as the new cyber capital of the UK. What is the timeline for fulfilment of this objective, and how confident are you of achieving this accreditation before the introduction of unitary authorities? Thank you.
Alicia?
I thank Emma for her supplementary question, though I do question some of the sort of factual validity of some of the statements made. I do, however, suggest that we have very exciting plans for the Golden Valley, as so many people have heard, and I hope that in the new year we'll be able to give you some fantastic news on the front of how we're going to be supporting our very own homegrown cyber ecosystem that will be better than the previous scheme that's mentioned in the original question, and really will be a testament to the incredible work that this Liberal Democrat Council has done to deliver this scheme from buying a field in the middle of nowhere to one of the most important schemes for this country's national security that there is going.
Thank you. And do you have a supplementary for question 9?
I do, thank you. First, thank you very much to Councillor Jeffries for his response last week to my supplementary question from October's meeting. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. With reference to negotiations, breaking down and terminating contracts and the financial settlement reached, which you mentioned in your response, for which I thank you to this question, how much has been spent on such financial settlements in the last 3 years? And presumably, this amount is included in the 782 NDA the original question refers to, and is not in addition to that £782,000. Thank you.
Pete?
Thank you, Emma, for your question and your supplementary, but you're referring to an October article of 2023, so first I'd have to validate that number. Then I'll have to validate the period you're looking for, then obviously try and find that information for you. So I'll look back at the minutes of what you just said and get you some more information in due course.
Thank you very much. That concludes public questions. So we now move on to agenda item 8, which is member questions. So, Councillor Horwood, do you have any supplementaries?
I have a supplementary, and I'm going to group the supplementary for questions 1, 2 and 3, if that's all right, Mr Mayor. I just want to thank Councillor Collins for his answer. This is how the system should work. That's an incredibly comprehensive and detailed answer on all the planning applications that have had Section 106 agreements in Leckhampton or are currently underway. However, it does rather underline that the system, the policy we adopted in 2022, which was that ward members should be actively consulted on such Section 106 agreements, and the head of planning has since confirmed that should have meant heads of terms and draft agreements being shared with councillors before the agreements were concluded. As far as I am aware, has not happened in any one of the 8 examples that he lists in his answers. So that's obviously not down to him, that's an operational issue, but I wonder if he would take this up with the head of planning and really examine whether or not the planning team are implementing the policy we, I think, rightly adopted in 2022 and how that is now working.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Horde, for your original questions and for your supplementaries, or supplementary so far, just the one. Yes, thank you for that. It was a very comprehensive answer that we were able to provide. And I still think that all the processes that we have are robust enough to support local ward members when it comes to planning applications that may contain something to do with a Section 106 agreement. I would like to extend that and say I would like to remind all members, not just Councillor Horwood, because he's asked the question, but I would like to remind all members that when a planning application comes into their ward, it is their responsibility to get involved with the planning process, with the planning case officer, to ask questions, to find out some details. It might not be anything to do with Section 106 funding, but it's part of your role. It's part of your role to do that as far as I'm concerned. You work in your wards and you should, at the earliest opportunity, make contact with that case officer. And finally, Councillor Horwood's question talked about training for members. Now, I would encourage all members to attend as many training sessions as they are able to do, especially when it comes to planning. I do. I'm a very busy individual. I managed to do it. And I have to say, I'm very disappointed that I keep hearing things from members about site viability, affordable housing, etc., etc. And I put together, with the help of the planning team, a training brief that was given before a recent planning committee, and only 2 or 3 members who weren't actually on the committee turned up for that. So I would encourage, if planning or training of any description is put on, that members do support that training, because it's vital, because you get some very, very important information when you attend those sessions. So consider yourselves all told off. Thank you.
And then we get to the weird bit where the mayor's put questions to the... or are you on one more? Okay. I thought you'd group them all together. Next one then, Martin.
My apologies, Mr Mayor. I grouped 1 to 3, but not number 4. So number 4 was about how we look at the policy and where that policy could be looked at in terms of the planning protocol. And I think Councillor Collins was right in his first answer that there is a responsibility on ward members in all this. But I would recall the exact wording of the 2022 Cabinet recommendation that was adopted, which says where an application is expected to result in the need for a Section 106 negotiation, the case officer to notify the relevant ward members to enable engagement early in the application process. So there is also onus on the case officers to get in touch with ward members when this is possible. In his reply, he says he doesn't think that the Constitution Working Group is necessarily the right route for this to be looked at, but I wonder if he could consult with officers and just come up with a process whereby, through whichever channel he and officers thinks is best, we do actually examine whether how that protocol could now be amended to just reinforce the policy we adopted back in 2022 and make sure it's actually happening. Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Matt. And by the way, I'm the one with the bad hip here, and I'm getting up every single question. Okay.
You are able to remain seated.
Oh,
if you
no,
wish.
no. Out of respect for you, Mayor, I'm going to stand up. Okay. Okay. Well, again, thank you, Councillor Horwood, for your question there. Yeah, you refer to the Constitution Working Group. I would say that any process or procedure or protocol is only valid if it is followed. Yeah. So I will take away your question and speak with the people in the senior planning team and see if it is being followed and if there's anything that we need to do to perhaps strengthen that. Okay. Thanks very much.
Right. We're just going to pause while we wait for the live stream technical issues to be investigated. So bear with me.
Did I miss my joke? Oh,
Maybe it was the
Right. Right. Yeah. I don't want to get the gavel out. So. Right, now we get to the odd bit where I've asked some questions. Well, I would just like to thank, initially, in terms of question 5, just to thank Councillor Clucas for her response. And the amount of data, I think, shows that this council is aware of the deprivation. And I'm glad to see that we've looked at the new stats and are looking at what we can do. So thank you. Do you want to come back?
Just quickly, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your question, and can I say thank you to officers for putting that together, because it was a heck of a piece of work that had to be gone through. So thank you to them. What I would like to suggest, given what you put in your question, is that it might be really useful looking at the 5 areas that are actually at the top of the deprivation list in Cheltenham, to bring together a meeting with yourself and other councillors for those areas to see how, with the officers, we can change the potential for those areas, to change the future for the children, the young people, the older people, those without work in those areas, so that we're not just talking about things, we're doing as well. And can I, while I have the floor, thank National Trust, part of which is local trust in that area, and indeed you, Mr. Mayor, for the work that you helped us do on the stadium for St Peters and the Moors. That will have an enormous impact in that area, and the potential working with Golden Valley to provide opportunity for jobs and training for young people who might not otherwise have that. So I look forward, if we can arrange that, to meeting with you and other councillors to see how we take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll thank Councillor Telford for his answer. No supplementary on that one. And in terms of terms of question 7, the only supplementary I have is if the road under the bridge needs to be closed for any investigation works, could we please use the opportunity of that closure to try and get some anti-bird netting up there, because the evidence on the ground suggests that walking under that bridge is a high-risk activity of getting gifts from above that nobody wants. And I just hope the council will consider that, because it's quite a lot of casework that we get about that bridge from the birds living in the bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Clearly, I take your request on board, but with the Highways Authority, who knows if they will and when notified accordingly. But I've heard your request and we'll pass it on to the relevant officers. Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes members' questions, which was section 8. So we now move on to agenda item number 9, which is the review of the Statement of Licensing Policy, Licensing Act 2003. And can I therefore invite the Cabinet Member for Safety and Communities, Councillor Atherstone, to introduce the report, please. Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our previous licensing policy statement was updated in 2020, and the policy statement needs to be updated every 5 years. And this time round, there has just been a little bit of tidying up in the majority, with no notable changes due to the fact there haven't been any significant changes to latest primary legislation or case law, etc. So those few changes include additional information with regards to personal licences and the annual fees, a new section on women's safety and wider vulnerabilities in the town centre and at various premises, further addressing safeguarding concerns, and also a note in the Appendix E with regards to premises taking ID and what the retention policies are on that. The new policy recommendations also include the work of the evening and nighttime economy working group, who have an aspiration to implement a charter for businesses to sign up to demonstrate their commitment to providing safe spaces for all. And that work will also support our continued Purple Flag accreditation that we've now held for 10 consecutive years that recognises Cheltenham as a thriving and safe town. So I would request that we take this forward today and thank officers who've putting the policy updates together. And if you have any questions or comments, do let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the first thing on this is, are there any questions to Councillor Atherstone on this report? I am not seeing any. So we now move to debate. Does any member wish to speak on this? Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that I really like this report, and I like the sort of improvements to women's safety, and I really like that it's track changes so you can see what's been updated. So if you've read it before, you can just read the bits that you need to update yourself on, and I think that's really good. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members? Not seeing any hands. So, Victoria, you get an opportunity to sum up. Do you have anything further to say?
Thank you, Councillor Davies, for pointing out that track changes to documents does make it very efficient and faster to be able to review. So thank you for noting that, and thank you to our lovely officers who enable that to make it possible. Thank you.
Right, so we now move to the vote using the electronic voting system. Is that everyone?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that is unanimously approved. So we now move on to agenda item 10, which is the review of taxi and private hire licensing policy, emissions policy. And again, Councillor Atherstone, over to you to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So back in July this year, we updated and adopted our revised taxi and private hire licensing policy, but we held back the section that talks about our 2030 emissions policy due to the previous consultation. That the new consultation was put forward and that has now concluded. So now, with regards to the emissions policy, we are proposing to adopt the same as that of Stroud District Council and Tewkesbury Borough Council. So therefore, 3 out of the 6 district authorities in Gloucestershire will have a consistent policy approach to emission standards, which will help us in minimising the fears with regards to potential licence shopping. There's also consideration for local government reorganisation. With that on the horizon, it's sensible to adopt a similar approach to neighbouring authorities that have the highest standards in terms of emissions policies. Moving forward, we're committed to keeping this approach, however, under review, working alongside our licensed trade, the Council's climate team and also Climate Leadership Gloucestershire, and will continue to work alongside other cabinet leads in the other districts. We know we're already on our journey to be carbon neutral by 2030, and as such we will review our vehicle emissions policy to consider whether a move to EV and or ULEV is appropriate by the 1st of April 2028. 2008. Just to note, electric vehicles are pure electric vehicles that have no tailpipe emissions, whereas ULEVs are currently defined as having less than 75 grams per kilometre of CO2 from the tailpipe. We recognise that taxis and the private hire trade are people's livelihoods, and they create employment, and they also provide vital services, not only to residents but also to visitors of Cheltenham, supporting safety, accessibility and overall economic activity. Electric car technology is continuously improving, especially with regards to battery capacity and management, and that is reducing the sort of historical main reason for non-adoption to the change with regards to concerns over range anxiety. Electric car ownership is continuing to increase, and that pushes up demand and is driving down the price. However, age and mileage of a current vehicle must also be considered, and whether there is sufficient fast charging infrastructure within the town. As such, we will continue to work to reduce barriers for licensed taxis and private hire vehicles operating in Cheltenham to be zero emissions by 2030, in line with the Borough Council's Climate Emergency Action Plan. On last count, and I'm very grateful for officers providing this, Michelle, thank you, and Jacob, before this morning's meeting. We currently are aware of 13 electric vehicles currently licensed by Cheltenham Borough Council, with a further 103 hybrid vehicles. So the change in 2025 has already started, thankfully, and that actually represents 48% of the total fleet. If required, a further policy review subsequent to 2028 will be taken again in April 2030, and possibly, if required, April 2033. That said, we'll be working to engage with all of our partners across Gloucestershire, the neighbouring districts, and the trade to ensure that we move in line with them and to put this forward as soon as we're possibly able. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question. I don't know if I'm misreading something, but on page 135, we've got the table of application and requirements. The last bullet point for renewal vehicle applications says, ambition that from all vehicles must emit zero emissions on their 2033 renewal date. And then on page 138, under the renewing a Hackney carriage vehicle licence, point D says all vehicles must emit zero emissions on their 2030 renewal date. So are they supposed to be 2 different years, or are they 2 different things? Sorry.
Please come back.
I have a feeling that is reference to what is historically within the policy, and the new policy proposal changes. Is that, Michelle, can I just double check that with you? Because I don't have the same page numbers. Have you got the point number? Sorry.
Use their mic.
And then page 138.
Ashley, can you use your mic when you...
Sorry, on page 138, D. All vehicles must emit zero emissions on their 2030 renewal date.
Can you hear me? Thank you. That's actually an error. Thank you for picking that up. So it should be 2033, and we'll make sure that that document's updated.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? So I've got one for you, which is we're looking to move to EVs. What are we doing to provide affordable public charging points for taxis at the places where they will need to be, potentially working in conjunction with the likes of the county council, who are responsible for highways, but also what are they called? Great British Railways, Network Rail, GWR, whoever is responsible for Cheltenham Spa Station, where obviously quite a lot of our taxi trade will wait to apply for hire. Because without the infrastructure, it's going to be very difficult. So what are we trying to do with them to help being able to charge in public?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually did a review whilst working with officers on this policy update to see what availability of charging infrastructure we currently had in Cheltenham. And it is quite sparse currently, especially when you're looking at the faster 300 kilowatt per hour charging rates. And I was kind of a little bit disappointed actually with regards to our Court Transport Hub with the 100, I think they have charging facilities they have there, but that is a slow charge in the majority of 7 kilowatt per hour, I think it is, which could take up to, I think, 7 or 13 kilowatt per hour, sorry, which will take about 7 hours to charge. So it's not really sufficient to support our taxi trade that will need a quick injection of additional battery capacity. However, I do note that we have a number of EV fast charge bays, for example, off the Bath Road, that are very efficient, that the County Council is working with the Borough Council to put these into various car parks, and more coming forward. But we will need more electric charging infrastructure in the coming years to support our taxi trade to make that change with the highest capacity charging options available, because waiting 7 hours to charge is not going to cut it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members with questions? Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, rather than a question, it's a bit of a comeback on what Councillor Atherstone just said about the Court Transport Hub. Yes, you're right. In the 100 charges inside the multi-storey bit, I believe, I don't know if they all are, but I believe that some of them are 7 kilowatt hour chargers. But in the bit in phase 2 next door, which is out in the open, there are at least 4, possibly 6 rapid charging points. Yeah, so I would have thought that would be the sort of place where taxi drivers would go if they needed a quick top-up. But there are some there, but the majority of them are indeed 7 kilowatt hour chargers.
Thank you for that. Okay, if there are no more questions, then we move on to member debate. Anyone wishing to speak on this? Martin.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to commend Councillor Atherstone on this report, and I'm going to support it. This is a tricky brief, as I remember from when I did it, and actually balancing our political demands for a commitment to net zero, which I'm really pleased to see she's absolutely sticking to, with the need for the taxi trade to perceive that they are able to earn a good living and manage their expectations. I think has been quite a difficult brief in the past, so the fact that it isn't hugely controversial is a really impressive thing. And I think in the revisions to the policy, she's taking a pragmatic view of ultra-low emission vehicles, and that's not quite the strict insistence on EVs that we were thinking of before. But actually, in a way, those ultra-low emission vehicles, which include plug-in hybrids and even hydrogen vehicles and other sort of technologies, has to be, I think, a sensible compromise. And actually thinking about it, if an ultra-low emission vehicle is both electric and with I think what are euphemistically called range extenders, which is actually a little petrol engine on the side for when the battery runs out. If you're thinking about very long jobs to London to Heathrow and back or something like that, then I think it is clear the taxi trade would quite like the reassurance of being able to have those backups. But actually, the basic economics of these vehicles means that because the electric motor is massively cheaper to run than the petrol one, actually, in most cases, on most local journeys, these will in effect be electric vehicles. So it seems to be, again, consistent with our ambition to get to net zero. And I think it's brilliant that we're taking such care over this policy, trying to make it work for the taxi trade, but also really sticking to our commitment to net zero, which is crucially important for all the reasons we all know about.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pinniger.
Thank you, Councillor Aviston, for bringing this forward. And I know we've had a number of discussions. It's good to see. I was really pleased to hear that, did you say 48% of the taxi trade is already either ultra-low emission vehicle or electric vehicle? That's, well, I believe that is what you said.
Not ultra-low emission, no, hybrid or electric. So hybrid of any type of hybrid variety or electric. So not diesel and not petrol.
Thanks for the clarification. Okay. I think the best bit of it is, though, and this came as a surprise to me after we'd been talking about the policy for some time, was that you now have, well, we are now one of 3 districts, which gives it a better chance of going forward as we move into local government reorganisation. So that's really important. And then I think the last thing I wanted to mention is that the market is moving, and pretty soon a new EV is going to be at a price point lower than a new petrol car. And the total cost of ownership of a full electric vehicle by 2028, 2030 will most probably drive this change anyway without taking away from the ability to make money for the taxi trade. So I'm just really pleased that this policy's come forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Are there any other members wishing to speak? So my comment just echoes the question that I asked. And I think it's great to move to get this move to EV. It's good that this has been, the policy has come through without a huge amount of pushback from the trade. And I know if the trade were aggrieved at the policy, we'd probably have a very full public gallery this afternoon. So well done on that. I think it's imperative on us as a council to put pressure on some of the big private operators such as GWR, Network Rail, or when that becomes Great British Railways, because if you look at the station, you will see there's lots of taxis waiting there for applying for hire, and something near taxi ranks as well, so that they can charge. Because if you jump in a taxi and you need to get to Heathrow, it's going to be expensive, but you don't want your journey being interrupted by someone having to recharge the EV, which could take a while. So I just hope that pressure can be put on the county council and other major providers who have taxi facilities. Thank you. But thank you. Now your opportunity to sum up, and then we move to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Horwood, for your support with regards to ULEVs. And I think, yeah, you're right, having that as an option in the interim is definitely one way to reduce tailpipe emissions sooner. With regards to local government reorganisation, thank you, Councillor Pinniger, you're absolutely right that where we have 3 district authorities all singing off the same hymn sheet, that will hopefully add the required weight to influence the other district authorities before we get to LGR. With regards to partnerships with other potential providers that have car parking spaces where taxis dwell. Absolutely, Councillor Willingham. Well, I'll take that back with officers, and perhaps we can have another look at the infrastructure in Cheltenham to see where taxis generally tend to naturally dwell and whether we can create more opportunities there. And with regards to affordability, absolutely, the price is coming down and we're already seeing that transition. So let's just hope demand continues to increase and that price continues to tumble. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we now move to the vote using the electronic voting system. Right. Again, that appears to be unanimous, so thank you very much. Right, we now move on to agenda item 11, which is the Hackney Carriage bylaws. Again, we're back to you, Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now we're moving on to the adoption of the Hackney Carriage bylaws. In November 2023, the Department for Transport updated the published bylaws for Hackney carriages, which acts as best practice for local authorities to adopt. Our previous bylaws date back to 2012 and therefore they need updating. The Local Government Act 1976 does not permit a local authority to attach conditions to a Hackney carriage driver licence. The only means of a conditioning is through the Hackney carriage driver licence is by way of bylaws made under Section 68 of the Town Police Clauses Act of 1847 and Section 171 of the Police Public Health Act, 1875. The purpose is to enable local licensing authorities to regulate Hackney carriage drivers and proprietors in such a way as to ensure that they are fit and proper persons and to ensure the safety of the travelling public. Although there is scope for the Council to deviate from the model, our officers do not consider this to be necessary. The Council, as we know, recently adopted a comprehensive taxi and private hire policy back in July 2025. And this policy, together with the updated bylaws, would be considered sufficient to ensure that applicants are fit and proper persons and to ensure the appropriate safety. If adopted today, a resolution will need to be published and the revised bylaws will need to be sealed by the Secretary of State. So I'd accept any questions or comments, but hopefully this is pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Oh, Councillor
I haven't
Hay.
got a question, Mayor, but actually I just looked and I realised that the recommendation just doesn't make sense. So the Council resolve to the Hackney Carriage bylaws. So I think the Council resolves to that the wording needs changing on that.
To be repealed.
To be repealed. Yes, exactly.
So that's in there.
So, yeah, but the recommendations, as that should be, the Council resolves that the Hackney Carriage. Yes. Sorry, it was just a point of clarification. Really, is that recommendation in itself is wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, so it should be the Council resolve that the Hackney Carriage bylaws dated to 26th June 2012 be repealed. Yeah, okay. Right, are there any questions from members? So I've got just a couple. In terms of these being model bylaws published by government, how much time and effort was required by the Council to get them implemented? In terms of, did we start immediately after they were published by the government, or is it pretty much the 12-week consultation and a bit more effort? I'm just trying to work out the logistics it's taken to get them from being published by government to us trying to adopt them today.
I have not asked that question of our officers because it has not been flagged that it caused any such time additional to what would normally be expected for such a policy update. But if there was anything unusual in terms of the workload, I will get back to you and let you know. Thank you.
Sounds like it was business as usual. Okay, thank you very much. So do any members have any... no one else got any questions, so we now open this to debate. Does any member wish to speak on this? I am not seeing any hands, so you get to sum up, Victoria.
I'll pass, thank you.
So we now move to the vote, electronic voting system. Please vote. Right, unanimous again. So we now move on to agenda item 12, which is the Local Council Tax Support Scheme 2627, which is Councillor Jeffries. Pete, over to you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Colleagues, each year the Council is required to set its local council tax support scheme for working age residents. Support for pensioners is not localised and continues to be under the national scheme. Funding for the scheme was previously included in the Revenue Support Grant, which was subject to annual reductions and has since vanished. So as we no longer receive that grant, we must fund the share of the scheme costs ourselves. In 2019-20, the Council approved a new scheme designed to ensure the most vulnerable, particularly those on lowest incomes, would continue to receive 100% support at the highest income band tier. The proposed scheme for 2026-27, as set out in this report, will again be based on 5 income bands. Some changes are being made to increase the income disregarded in respect to disabled children and extend the income levels in line with increased welfare benefits. A summary of the scheme is provided in the attached appendix, I think it's Appendix 5. Colleagues, I'm sure you'll know across your communities that many of our residents continue to struggle with the ongoing cost of living pressures. We know that households on the lowest incomes often spend a large proportion of their income on essentials. This scheme will provide important support to our most vulnerably financially challenged residents. The scheme is expected to cover approximately 4,300 working age residents, and based on the data as of October 2025, this support amounts to just over £4.3 million. I trust that colleagues will support the recommendations in the report. I draw particular attention to the recommendation that grants delegated authority to adjust the scheme when national welfare benefit changes occur. This flexibility is vital to ensure our most vulnerable residents are not disadvantaged. I'd also like to, while I've got the opportunity, put on record my thanks to the Resident Benefits team and for all their officers in there who continue to work hard on behalf of our residents across the town. And I commend the report to you, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members on this report? I am not seeing any questions, so we now move to debate. Does anyone wish to comment on the report? Councillor Talford.
I think I said this every year, but I just wanted to point out the 100% support, because obviously that's not something that we have to do, and I think it's really important that we do it, to be honest. We've got so many vulnerable residents and people that need that support, and to know that our administration does that, I think is really important. And obviously what we were talking about earlier, I think it's fair to say that we wouldn't have been in a position to do that if Paul Jones hadn't done all the work he'd done. So I'd like to really highlight that and hope residents know that we've got their corner as much as we physically can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members? And again, Councillor Lewis.
I nearly missed it, but I had to check a point because the moment it came up, something came to mind. It really bothered me. I saw it in the news the other day, and I think it's really important that we take this time in our somewhat fractious period of politics to look at some of the reform councils up north, 2 of which have already decided that they don't want to offer any support like this at all. One of them has actively started charging some of the poorest residents of their council who had not been charged council tax for many of them, for as long as they can remember. Council tax, something that will frankly not only lead to even more families having to choose between heating and eating, but will also ultimately cost that council more than they will ever be able to recover, because you simply cannot recover this money from people who do not have it. It's a really incredible thing that we somehow managed to pull off our 100% support. I know just how big the number is to make it happen. And I know Paul worked incredibly hard every year to balance those books. It's a very difficult one. But I think as we sort of look down the barrel of the gun and the politics that we all face out there in the world and all that's going on, it reminds us how important it is that we do elect the right people and that we do stand up for people who will otherwise simply be trampled underneath the wheels of Nigel Farage's bank account, sadly.
Thank you very much. Any other members with comments? I'll just add my bit, which is, again, I am really proud of this council of looking after the most deprived people so that they aren't forced into paying council tax that they can ill afford to pay. With that, if I move to Councillor Jeffries to sum up, and then we'll move to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't comment on the size of Nigel Farage's bank account. It's considerably more than it should be, I suspect. And equally, the Reformed Councils, as you comment, it's actually a backward step. It's a hugely backward step to tell residents on a platform getting elected that you're going to save them money and then not save them money and actually cost more money. It's absolutely shocking. I can remember when this scheme was designed, and you're right to mention Paul. I think it was Paul and Councillor Hay are the culprits of this fantastic policy, and I don't bear any ill will to give them that credit, because ultimately it costs you more money to try and recover money against people that can't afford it. So actually you can be more generous in not doing that and help more residents, and that was the solution they came up with, and held fast throughout the whole time of austerity, I'll have you know. So I'm proud to obviously share this report and this policy. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for colleagues' comments.
Thank you, and if we can move to the vote, please. Right, we have everyone in the chamber, so that again is unanimous. And we now move on to agenda item 14, which is the Cheltenham Borough Council's greenhouse gas emission report. Councillor Pinniger. Richard. We're back to Pete then, sorry. Half-yearly Treasury Management Report. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's one of those local government finance things that I learnt last, so I would have happily skipped the agenda item, but unfortunately, regulations do require that the council is regularly reviewing and scrutinising its treasury management activity every year. This includes both the investments we hold and the borrowing we undertake to finance key projects and programmes. This mid-term report sets out the position for the first 6 months of the current financial year and confirms that all Treasury activity has been undertaken in compliance with the Council's policies as approved by members in March 2025. Members will note that from the report that the General Fund borrowing costs and investment returns are on target to the forecast in the 2025-2026 budget. Taking into account the HRA debt, reimbursement for this year and seeing investment returns remaining steady. Hopefully in the second half of this financial year, we will see borrowing costs reduce as interest rates start to fall, hopefully further. The majority of council's borrowing is at a fixed rate and is therefore insulated from recent increases and volatility in interest rates. The ongoing capital commitments are currently being met through short-term borrowing as fixed rate lending remains close to 6% compared with short-term borrowing rates around 4%. That may not be exactly correct, but around those figures. As part of the 2026-27 budget process, work continues to review our borrowing strategy and minimise future financial pressures. Officers monitor interest rates daily and will secure fixed-rate borrowing at the most advantageous opportunity within what remains a challenging market. Alongside this, we continue to maximise opportunities to generate capital receipts that can then use to repay debt. This report has been considered by the Treasury Management Panel, and I put on record my thanks to them. I also put on record my thanks to the Treasury Management officers in the finance team. I commend the report to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members on the report? Again, I'll just pick up something with you that you may be able to answer. I'm sure a lot of us have had communications about the ethical choices of investment, whether that's arms, oil, etc., etc. Are we able to confirm, provide any information about the investments and the ethical background of them, respecting that everybody is different in their views of what's ethical and what isn't?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do know that we take the relevant advice and follow those regular guidance when it comes to ethical policies and where we move forward with our investments and holdings. There is one that always crops up regularly. I think it's the Schroders Income Maximiser Fund. I can report to Council, actually. I've got an update, if I can just get it. I think I need to change my glasses. Yeah, that position is reducing, as it has been year on year. I know that members are keen to see us not have that particular holding, but unfortunately, just to get rid of it would cost a slight amount of money. So it has been clear that the instructions to the finance team is to reduce that holding over time. That now sits at somewhere around about £59,200 of the council's original £2 million that's been invested. That's down from £120,000 in September 24. So we are moving that position in the right direction, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any other members with any questions? In which case we move to the debate. Any members wish to comment? I am not seeing any. Again, you get to sum up, Councillor Jeffries, if you need. In which case, we will move to the vote. Those in... Too keen. This one didn't need a vote, so... we've all voted in favour of the report.
More votes.
There we go. Right. This is from me getting them out of step. I'm looking at the wrong part. Right. Now we do finally get on to agenda item 14, greenhouse gas emissions report. So, Councillor Pinniger.
Chair, members, when we declared a climate emergency in 2019, we made a promise not just to ourselves but to every resident of Cheltenham and to future generations that we would act. Today I bring you the evidence of that action, our annual carbon footprint reports for Cheltenham Borough Council and housing services for the year 24-25. Why does this matter? Because climate change is not an abstract concept. It is here, now, shaping the world that we live in. It affects the food we eat, the homes we live in, our health and our well-being. Some forces are beyond our control: melting ice sheets, ecosystems under severe threat, and global tipping points, but others are not. Climate change is also driven by choices we make every day, and as a council, we have the power to choose. This report is not just numbers on a page. It is a mirror held up to our organisation, showing where we are succeeding and where we must do better. It tells us that Scope 1 emissions, that is our direct emissions from fossil fuels, for the council are down 55% from the baseline in 2019-20. That is a huge achievement, thanks to measures like fleet electrification and the switch to hydrogenated vegetable oil in our Ubico vehicles. Scope 2 emissions, our electricity use at the council, have risen by 23%. That might sound alarming, but it reflects a deliberate shift, moving away from gas towards electrification, which is essential for decarbonisation. This is the transition in action. Scope 3 emissions, our supply chain, remain our biggest challenge. At over 7,000 tonnes for CBC and 11,500 tonnes for housing, these emissions dwarf everything else. But this is also our greatest opportunity to innovate, to partner with local businesses, to decarbonise our social housing, and to embed sustainability into every contract and procurement decision. For housing services, the picture is similar. We have reduced emissions from communal heating and office spaces, but the sheer scale of emissions from our housing stock, over 7,000 tonnes, shows why improving energy efficiency in homes is critical. This is why programmes like the Warm Homes Fund and our investment in heat pumps and insulation matter so much, not just for carbon reduction, but for people's lives. Warmer, cleaner air and reduced energy costs are not abstract benefits, they are real improvements for families across Cheltenham. Members, this is not easy work. It requires investment, innovation and courage. It means making decisions that will sometimes feel uncomfortable because the cost of inaction is far greater. Every pound we spend on decarbonisation today strengthens our resilience against spiralling energy costs tomorrow. Every tonne of carbon we cut brings us closer to a safer, healthier future. And let us be clear, this is not just about compliance or ticking boxes, it is about leadership. While some voices say net zero is unnecessary or impossible, we know that the opposite is true. We must show that local government can lead, not because we are forced to, but because it is the right thing to do. Our actions here are part of a worldwide movement for climate justice, and we should be proud of the part that we play. This report is our accountability. It is our transparency, it is our commitment to action, and it is the foundation for everything that comes next, because you cannot manage what you do not measure. And as we move forward, we will continue to empower residents to make greener choices through grants and infrastructure that make sustainable living easier and more affordable. So today, I ask you to reaffirm that commitment, approve the publication of these reports, share them with pride, and let us continue to work together across parties, across communities, across Gloucestershire to make a beacon of climate leadership. Because the truth is simple. The climate emergency will define the lives of our children and our grandchildren. What will define us is how we choose to respond.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Atherston. And Councillor Davies. Right.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Pillinger, for bringing this to us today. One of my questions is with regards to the challenges in terms of collecting Scope 3 emissions data and actually the improvement of that in terms of reducing emissions. So I note that from the Climate Emergency Action Plan that was last updated in 2024, with regards to transport, there are a number of items with regards to improving the infrastructure for cycling and walking. And there's mention of, for example, that would impact commuting to and from offices, that would impact business travel potentially that could be switched to alternative, like maybe like a cargo bike or something like that. But all of this is wholly sort of, we can't do it without the collaboration with the county council providing that infrastructure. So one of the points is to be implemented between 2024 and 2027. So we've still got a year and a bit to go. But can I ask, what's the progress currently like with the county council in terms of not only connecting the Isle Court hub with Bishop's Cleeve through Cheltenham, but also serving residents of Cheltenham that live in Cheltenham and that work in Cheltenham to get into the town centre from the various neighbourhoods.
Thank you, Councillor Atherston. As you know, I'm very keen to see this improved as well. I did a little bit of research looking through the action plan. So the action plan that you're referring to is the 2024 update. On the current list of actions in the spreadsheet that the climate team are working on, it would appear that these actions have moved into the strategic and local plan. But I can't see them anywhere else, so I'm going to go back to the team and I will give you a written answer later if that's okay.
Councillor Davies. Ashley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Pinniger. I really liked reading this report. As you said, you can only manage what you measure, and I think this is a really good example of, you know, being honest about where we are, what we're aiming for, where we're falling short currently, and where we're trying to make things up. I have 3 questions for you. Do you want them all at once or one at a time? All at once. Cool. So my first question comes from page 401 in our agenda, where we haven't measured emissions from the ground fleet this year. We've rolled our figures over with regards to the airport. Why have we done that and not done fresh measurements? The second question is on page 413. The Housing Emissions Report notes that the Council no longer has access to landlord electricity supplies information for CBH properties. Are we expecting to get that information, and if so, when? And my final question is on the next steps, where you talk about the insulation of houses. Have we got any information on the existing U values of properties and what level we're looking to improve them to? And we also state in the next steps of the report that we're looking to improve the fabric of 383 houses, but we don't give a number around how many we're looking to fit with heat pumps. And I was wondering if you had a rough idea of how many we were looking to fit with heat pumps over the next year, and whether or not you had the balance of air source and ground source or not. So, yeah, I know that you won't have all the answers now, but those are my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Pinniger.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. With regard to the ground fleet of the airport, is that what we're talking about? I will have to get back to you because I'm not sure where that's gone. The landlord meters, I believe that we've changed supplier and we've lost access to the portal, so we're not expecting to get that back. But we will, in future, have the new suppliers portal, and we will then have the readings for subsequent years. So we've carried those over so that the report makes sense, so that we've got a baseline. In terms of the U values, I'm not really familiar with the phrase U values. Are we talking EPC? And in terms of EPC, we're working... Sorry, can I hand back?
Yeah, sorry, so it's related to the watts per metre squared that is being lost through the fabric of the building?
Okay, I don't know whether that is part of the EPC rating, but if you will, I'd like to tell you about the EPC, because as part of bringing CBH into the council, making it housing services, there is a full audit of all the properties, all 4,900 and which will provide us with that information. So we should have a good idea of the EPC of all of our properties. In terms of heat pumps, we have done the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund for phase 1 and 2, which I think was in the tens of houses, and at that point the householders had the option of saying no to a heat pump, so several of them did. We did try and install heat pumps. In 3.1 it's become a requirement, so I think that's 3.1, but the latest social housing fund requires heat pumps. So the new figure, 384 was it, would all have heat pumps as well as insulation. Thanks.
Thank you. And then Councillor Clucas, your question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a quickie, really. Are we going to communicate what we are looking at doing, what we have done, to our residents? Are we going to tell them what we're doing? And if we are, when is that going to happen? I may need to come back on that, Mr Mayor.
Over to you.
Okay, I suppose we can group residents into a few groups. So in terms of people in social housing, housing services, obviously they have the newsletter, so they will get articles in that newsletter informing them. The comms team, the climate team and the comms team regularly put out information on our website, news articles when there are breakthroughs and when new things happen. But also, we do have a position open for an engagement officer, and the previous engagement officers, because there were two, I was massively impressed. Sorry, we do have still the business engagement officer, but the household engagement officers. I was massively impressed by what can be done by professionals who apply their intelligence to reaching as many people as possible. And the figures coming in while they were still in post was that they felt it had some influence on 53,000 households. So those kinds of figures, when you've got a professional applying their know-how, the kinds of things you can achieve, and quite soon we should have a replacement officer. Thank you.
If I may, one of the reasons I was asking is because, of course, we're going to have renters' rights that we will have to go through and organise and sort through. Some of that has started already. But it just struck me that there is an opportunity potentially. Forgive me, please tell me it's a load of rubbish, if it is. But there might be an opportunity when we are actually distributing our council tax letter in the new year, actually to put something in to explain what we're doing and how people can get involved and what needs to be done. If that were the case, then it would be a very little cost to the council, but would go to every single home. I just wanted to know if that was a potential, if it could be done, if it was worth looking at doing, and if so, then let's do it.
Richard, please.
I'm afraid that's outside of my portfolio, so I would have to pass it to Peter. Sorry.
That may be something to take offline with Cabinet rather than in here. I think it's been noted. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that when I was reading through this, it was a fascinating and informative report. But when Councillor Pinniger got up and made his speech, an impassioned speech that really added to what we'd already read, it augmented it for me and it made it even more interesting. So thank you for that. But listening to members, when members start asking questions in talk, and it sometimes gets my juices flowing. And I remember back to the old days of the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, when the first thing we did, we only had 4,500 properties then. The first thing we did, we had a pilot scheme, 2 properties in that pilot scheme, and getting the tenants on side and to understand what was being offered to them was a challenge. And I think in the end, one of those 2 actually almost failed because the lady who was a tenant, I think she got scared, blinded by the science, and she didn't want to go ahead with an awful lot of what was being offered. Then we had phase 1, then we've had phase 2, and we've gone on and we've gone on. I don't know if the legislation has changed, but we do need that tenant engagement to make sure that tenants are on board and they understand what it is that's being offered to them. It's easier with the new builds, because that's easy, you know. But it's this fabric first and this, you know, dealing with the existing properties, which is the real challenge. So I think perhaps is there still, I don't know, a question, is there still some work to be done there? Or could you perhaps give us an update on that and how we persuade our tenants that this is the right thing to do?
I'm afraid that housing is not inside my portfolio. I think, would you be able to give some detail on that?
I think this is a Cabinet thing. So,
Can I just say, Mr. Mayor, the answer to that is yes. The answer to that is we have our tenant's voice, which goes out. The answer to that is, if you'd like to do an article for that, we'll get it out in the next edition. And if you want to give us some further information, which can go to our private sector rented properties, we can do that. And that will mean that in terms of rented properties, we can get the message out. In terms of owned properties, a little more difficult, which is why I was suggesting perhaps the council tax stuff to go with that. But that I'm sure we can work on, Mr Mayor, and we can do it.
Okay. So we were on questions there, and I was waiting for Councillor Collins to get to a question, which he eventually did. Any more questions? Not seeing any. Right. Any member wish to speak? Councillor Telford, Isaac.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll take off my current portfolio hat and briefly steal Paul's. Just to point out the HVO and the Ubico side of things, because that's obviously made a huge improvement to our Scope 1 emissions. And when I was in that portfolio and went to Gloucestershire Waste and Recycling Partnership meetings and stuff, you could see how Cheltenham was leading the way on all of that. And now most of the other districts are adopting similar methods and moving forward in a positive way. And I know Tewkesbury using our HVO source to fuel their vehicles as well. And I think that's really important. It's another example of Cheltenham doing something when everyone else says, oh, do we want to differing around? Actually, no, we're just going to do it. We're going to make it happen because it's the right thing to do. And I see that's obviously made a huge impact in their Scope 1 emissions. So it should be applauded. And thank you to Ubico and our teams here, like Karen, for making that happen.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other members wish to speak? So, Richard, you get to sum up.
Thank you. I think we can just move to the vote. Thanks.
Perfect. Right, electronic voting. Eight, 30. Okay, so 30 in favour. It's unanimous. Since we've been going for almost 2 hours, we're going to have a small adjournment for Christmas mince pies and what have you, and a cup of tea. So we're just going to have a short adjournment. How long should we have? Yeah. Please sit down. Right, firstly, thank you to our officers for sorting out a little bit of a Christmas break for members. So I'm sure everyone will be glad for the work that they did. So thank you very much to them. Right, moving on, we are now at agenda item 15, which is the Member Development Panel Annual Report, which is Councillor Chelin to present and no vote required. So, Jackie, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm sure you're all exhausted with all this voting we've been doing so far, so yeah, you're let off for this one. I'm really pleased to be able to present this report and take the opportunity to thank Democratic Services colleagues, particularly Bev Thomas and Claire Morris, for their ongoing hard work on member development, and my fellow member development panel colleague councillors, Councillor Davis and Councillor Pemberton. As mentioned in the report, we were thrilled to achieve the Councillor Development Charter from South West Councils in May. And thanks go to those colleagues as well who took part in the interviews on that day. So Councillors Hay, Tailford, Collins and Davis, and also the officers Claire, Hughes and Bev Thomas. So as you will see on pages 343 and 345, anyway, in the report you will see the recommendations that have been made by the assessment panel and which we are working on at the moment. So one of the ideas is about clarifying the role of our champions. So a draft role description will be submitted to the Constitution Working Group for consideration at some point. As you know, we currently have councillors who are champions for cycling and walking, for safeguarding, for refugees, and maybe we could give consideration to other champions, such as youth champions, in the future. As mentioned in the report, I was asked to be an assessor on the panel for another local authority because they were reviewing their charter, and they were going for Charter Plus. And I don't quite know what Charter Plus means, except that there were nearly 800 pages of evidence and documentation. So all credit to them for that. But it also means that there were some really good aspects of good practice that we can look at and maybe model or adopt for ourselves. And there was some good practice that we're currently doing as well. For example, Democratic Services colleagues have organised IT drop-ins in advance of some of the major committees to help colleagues, and we'll be doing more of those and maybe supporting with MS Teams, because I've had a few comments about how we could use MS Teams a bit better. And the other thing is the buddying scheme. This other local authority had a more formal buddying scheme between officers and councillors, and again we can look to try to encourage more engagement in our scheme, because the officers are really helpful and prepared to spend time with new councillors, which I think is really, really good. Also coming next year is a new approach to the EDI training, which is currently being sourced for rollout probably around February or March. And look out also after this meeting for a skills audit. So this will be circulated to all current members, asking you to share information maybe more about the general skills that you bring from your working and professional lives, so that we can share those a bit better and make the most of those, because we've got some really, really talented people here in the chamber. In talking to you all at meetings and listening to your concerns about training and development, I try to feed these back into the member development panel for discussion, but please feel free to more formally request that we consider your ideas and suggestions, because they're always welcome. Planning was mentioned earlier, and Mike's a great advocate, and he organised more planning training. So we want to make sure that everybody can access that training. We can't give you more time in your lives, but we can hopefully make it available at different times of the day and online, etc. So thank you for your attention. Have you got any questions?
Any member questions? I am not seeing any. Any members wish to comment? Councillor Hay and then Councillor Atherston.
Thank you, Mayor. What I'd like to do is put on record my thanks to Jackie, who very ably chairs the member development. And we've come such a long way in the way that training is delivered to members. And I really would as well support Jackie in saying, please do encourage you to fit in the skills audit when it comes out. We tried it a few years ago. Wasn't a huge success. But whether you think you've got something to offer, everybody's got something to offer. Everybody's got a skill or a particular way that they can contribute to that in order to enhance and encourage, actually, other people to come forward to being councillors. So thank you, Jackie.
Victoria?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just like to also say thanks to Councillor Shellin and the team and Democratic Services for giving us such varied training opportunities. I know that since I've been a councillor, this has just continued to improve year on year, and I find it extremely helpful in responding to whether that's councillor casework or working on policies. And it's very valuable. So thank you for giving us those opportunities for development. And I look forward to exploring the EDI one in February next year, March. Thank you.
Any other members? Councillor Clucas?
Just quickly, thank you. I think this is tremendous. And I'm not sure how many of you are aware of what's happening in the rest of Europe and actually in the rest of the world. But what we're seeing is women stepping out of politics through fear, intimidation, and so on. And that is having an enormous effect on our democracies, wherever we live in Europe. And so what you're doing here is to give all of our councillors, male and female, a feeling that they belong, that they can come and get help if they need it, that you are here and that we are here to support one another. And I think that that is really important and really good. And look around the room and see how many we have here. How many women? I'm going to say older men, forgive me. And even some younger men, because they feel that they can be part of this. And that makes a heck of a difference. So thank you, Jackie, for the work you're doing. And thank your colleagues too.
Thanks, Flo. Any other members? So just for me to say, yes, thank you very much for the work that you've done on this. In terms of training councillors up, I think we've got responsibilities of everything from dealing with abandoned vehicles to zoo licensing. So it genuinely is an A to Z of issues. And continuous professional development is really, really important no matter what you're doing. Hopefully, members will keep an eye on the LGA training that is available for all sorts of things. I know I've attended licensing training when I was chair of licensing, but I'm sure they do training for all sorts of the other functions that the council have, especially if you're stepping up into leadership roles, whatever they may be. In terms of the skills audit, all I would say is it's worth noting that there are 4 members of this council with doctorates, so just don't ask in too much detail because PhD theses are generally quite intractable unless you are very well acquainted with the subject. But that's 10% of the council who've got a doctorate of some sort as their degree, so that's pretty impressive. With that, I guess we move. We don't need to move to the vote, so we can. Do you want to sum up? No?
No, that's fine.
So
Thank
this
you.
is just for noting. So we move on to agenda item 16, which is delegation to Gloucestershire County Council to act as designated county planning authority responsible for deciding on the requirements contained in Parts 1 and 2, Schedule 2 of the M5 Junction 10 Development Consent Order Supplement, to which I hand over to Councillor Collins. Mike.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Well, first of all, apologies to everybody, to all colleagues for the late addition of this item to today's, well, very full council agenda. Secondly, you don't worry, you will get a chance to actually vote on this, okay? It is a largely procedural and rather technical issue, but when you read the report, I think at least anyway, that it makes complete sense. A development consent order, or a DCO, that those of us in the know call it, is a type of plan permission, and it's used for nationally significant infrastructure projects, such as the work that would be going on around Junction 10 of the M5. Not only Junction 10 itself, but all the works associated with that project as well. So things like the new link road to the Golden Valley development, the widening of the A4019, or Tewkesbury Road, and the cycle path and the improvements to the footways as well. Now, this DCO was created and agreed by the Secretary of State for Transport back in June of this year. However, as the scheme includes not only ourselves, but Gloucestershire County Council and Tewkesbury Borough Council too, the Secretary of State and National Highways looked at it and they actually thought there was a risk of introducing some ambiguity to the management of the project. So the decision has been made and agreed to delegate planning powers to Gloucestershire County Council, as they are, after all, the local highways authority. You will see in the report that there are 4 recommendations, and that those recommendations are all compliant with the responsibilities placed on us here at Cheltenham Borough Council. We have, you would have noticed, the officers were here earlier, but they've all drifted off, but we've got 2 diehards at the back, Tracy, and hopefully, I mean, if anyone's got any questions, I'll give it a go, but if not, then we've got support there to give you the right answer. That said, I hope that you all are all able to support me in agreeing to these recommendations, and that one thing that I must point out is this is rather urgent, yeah? So we do need to sort it out now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any member questions based on the report? Councillor Clucas, and then Councillor Jeffries.
I beg your pardon, Mayor. Thank you very much for that. The question I want to ask is in relation to how major construction is going to take place in that area. And I ask that because you may recall that when we had the JCS planning inspector come here and prepare her report for the JCS et al., one of the things that was said was that no large vehicles, developers' vehicles, should be using local roads. And they mentioned Swindon Village, but actually I could mention the Moors as well, frankly, and St. Peter's, and I could mention St. Paul's too. So how are we going to ensure 2 things? 1, that that is actually upheld and followed, and 2, that those organisations, those developers that come in to do the work are properly monitored by highways, and should they break what is, I believe, a legal requirement, that they should be taken to task for it. How are we going to do that?
Councillor Collins.
You know what? I knew you were going to ask a question like that. Now, first of all, individual planning applications that are dealing with not only houses, but the infrastructure as well, they would contain conditions which manage the build plan and the transport plans to bring materials on and off of site. Now, that's one thing, but the other thing, of course, is the enforcement of that. And the enforcement, because it's highways, the enforcement, and I'm going to look at the back, I'm going to say, is the responsibility of county highways. But I agree that we, as the local planning authority, the developers themselves, and county highways would need to work in partnership to make sure that that actually happens. Now, am I getting a nod or a shake of the head from the back? I'm getting 2 nods. I'm going to take that as a victory, okay, and I'll sit down.
Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask a question, and I think I'm going to get a couple of nods. I may not. It's like the Simon Cowell thing, isn't it? You hope for it, but you never know. In 2.4 of the report, it does say the Secretary of State, blah, 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 caused ambiguity. So am I right in saying that the Secretary of State made a decision to do something or something changed, and now we're here now having to make this change to make sure that the scheme goes ahead? I just want to just clarify that. Am I correct in my understanding it was the Secretary of State's decision to do something, Mike?
Councillor Collins.
Yeah, I think that the Secretary of State noticed there may be some ambiguity by doing what we had originally planned to do. And at the moment, there is no additional cost. But if we don't make the right decision today, there could be a cost against this council in the future. But I still strongly believe that Gloucestershire County Council, as the experienced local highways authority, they should be the ones that are managing this because they've got the skills and the expertise to do. Well, I'm getting, all right, the new Gloucestershire County Council administration. But I think they are the right people to be doing it. And again, are we getting nods? Are we getting... oh, no. Is that a yellow card?
Thank you, members.
It's the other side.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to make a point of clarification. So the ambiguity came from what we feel was the Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State in the DCO referred to the relevant planning authority. And of course, the relevant planning authority in this area is a two-tier authority. It's the County Council and it's the District Authority. So this statement of a relevant authority, well, who takes the responsibility? So what we're trying to do through this recommendation is really clarify that point. So all the points that Mike made, Councillor Collins made, in respect of the statement, which is it makes common sense that we have just one single authority. But just to pick up Councillor Clucas's point as well, if I may, while I'm here as well, is that we are a statutory consultee. So when we delegate the powers, we will become a statutory consultee with the County Council. So as a district, we'll still have the opportunity to engage in the planning process. Outside of this as well, you'll notice in the recommendation that there's going to be an agreement that sits outside of this decision, and we can also be quite explicit within what those responsibilities and what that engagement looks like as well. So, but we can take that offline and have that engagement with the County Council. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clucas.
So that would mean, Tracy, sorry about this. That would mean that the recommendations of the Planning Inspectorate would be taken through in relation to any planning application that involved Cheltenham Council, and we would be statutory consultees for anything that went through the County Council, and therefore the Planning Inspectorate's recommendations would follow into that as well.
Thank you. Is that okay, Chair, to respond? Yeah. So just to respond to that, I think we just need to be clear in that any application outside of the transport, the M5 Junction 10, for example, Elms Park, still sits with the District Council. That's not being delegated to the County Council. It's only relating to M5 Junction 10. Yes. Yeah.
Hang on.
The situation is that M5 Junction 10, according to the planning officers here, actually has an impact on Elms Park and the access and egress therefrom. So obviously there would be an issue there because Junction 10 actually has that already.
I'm not. Is this relevant to this DCO? Yes. Okay. I think this might be something to take offline.
Could I suggest that, if you wouldn't mind, Tracy, if you could go away and email me with the response to that, I think that might be helpful, because Junction 10 will actually be affecting Tewkesbury Road and the other side of the road as well, and that will have an impact on how other traffic actually gets to and from. So I think it would be useful if we could have a note of that, please.
It's quite a complex legal instrument.
So just for clarity, I think I'm going to look for Tracy for a nod as well here. All this report is asking you as councillors to do is to clarify that when we use the term relevant planning authority in relation to Junction 10, purely Junction 10, what we mean is the County Council, just to remove that bit of ambiguity that it doesn't mean Cheltenham Borough Council, it means the County Council, but we, as a result of that, will become a statutory consultee, so we will still be able to be involved in the process, and it's kind of that simple. That's all this report is asking you to do. Does that make sense?
Do any other members have any questions? Not seeing any. So I just would like to check something. So my understanding, which may not be quite accurate, is that the county predominantly is the planning authority for minerals and education land. And I just want to check that they have sufficient resources and ability to do things like planning enforcement if something goes wrong. And also to just check an assumption that as and when local government reorganisation happens, this would move to whatever comes next without further work, or would further work be needed?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I did say when I stood up that this is rather technical and complicated. I don't really think I can give a valid answer there, because it's the County Council that would be responsible for that, and rather than us. Who knows when LGR is actually going to hit us, but I think I'll leave it at that, if that's okay.
Thank you. Right. Any further questions from members? I'm not seeing any hands, so we now move to debate. Does anyone wish to comment? So I've got Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've waited I don't know how many years about Junction 10. I'm happy to support this. Let the County Council be the named authority, and let's get on with it. Thank you.
Any other members wish to comment? Councillor Andrews. Glenn.
Yes, this is obviously a very sensible way forward. I would just like to comment that had we had the good fortune of still being members of the European Union, I have a sneaking suspicion the Regional Development Fund would already have had this sorted by now, which in itself would have meant we'd have had more social and affordable housing in the process. I just thought I'd like to put that on record.
Thank you very much. Any more members for comments? I think my only I am happy to support this. I think the thing we need to make sure of is that if there are any infractions or perceived infractions by residents, that the county would take planning enforcement action in a way that's commensurate to whatever the allegations are, you know, the investigation, and potentially whatever action is needed, because this could affect local residents. But other than that, I am more than happy to support. So, anyone else wish to make a comment? Not seeing any. So, Councillor Collins, do you have anything further to add?
I wasn't going to say anything else until the last two interventions from Councillors Jeffries and Andrews. Can I just say that how refreshing it is to get sensible, succinct responses from the greater membership of the Council on important things such as this. So thank you.
And with that, we move to the vote. Hopefully. There we go. Yep, that's unanimous. Right, and so, yep, that one's been unanimously carried. And we now move on to agenda item 17, which is the appointment of a Section 151 officer, and this is also a supplement that you will have. So I now need to invite Claire Hughes, who's our Director of Governance, Housing and Communities, to introduce...
Actually,
Rowena's going to do it. Okay, Rowena's going to do it. So my notes say Claire, yes, so apologies. So, Leader.
Thank you, Mary. It was going to be, Claire was willing to step into the breach because I wasn't sure that I was going to make today's council because, surprise, surprise, I was doing LGR stuff in Gloucester interviews. So I wasn't sure I was going to get back. But I am. So I will present this report. Unfortunately, unlike, well, it's a necessary appointment that we make because it's a statutory position that we have to have a Section 151 officer. And obviously, with the sad passing of Paul, we had to, at that very first council meeting, the Monday after Paul had died, we had to appoint a returning officer, which we did. And we now have to appoint an interim Section 151 officer. The interviews were done by mostly by Gareth and Claire and others in the team, and she is quite well known to a few officers across Gloucestershire. So I'm very glad that we've actually been able to appoint, as on an interim basis, a new Section 151 officer. But as it's a statutory post, it needs to come here for council to support that. Adele Taylor is her name, as you can see in the report, and she will be with us in January. She has lots of local government experience, and we're much closer to home than where she currently works. So she's looking forward to not having to do a big commute. So, subject to any questions, Mayor, that's it.
Are there any member questions? Not seeing any hands. Are there any member comments? Councillor Day.
I'd just like to thank the leader and the officers for moving quickly, in incredibly difficult circumstances, to fill this critical post for the council. So, thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Hay, do you want to sum up?
If I might just take this opportunity, is that, despite the fact that the very sad demise of Paul way before his time, what we had was a fantastic finance team who absolutely stepped up to the plate in everything that they did. And I would like to place my thanks to John Whitlock on right here, right now, in public, because that's a heck of a job that he took on and absolutely carried it through under very, very difficult circumstances, because John, actually, like many, many others before him, was one of Paul's protégés, if you like, and part of his legacy. So he's done a fantastic job, and he absolutely deserves to get the support. We've got lots of people, but we needed that strategic lead, and we've had that in an interim period with somebody else that we've employed just to support John. But it'd be good news, I hope, for John, that he now feels that he's got that interim support until Gemma returns, and that when we did Adele's interview, we very clearly said that actually we're not looking at 3 months, we are looking at a commitment from you for a year, up to a year. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. And can I move this to the vote, please? And again, that's unanimous. So, agenda item 18, notice of motions. You'll be glad to know that none have been received. Agenda item 19, any item that the Mayor determines is urgent and requires a decision. You'll be glad to know there are none of those. So it merely remains for me to thank you for your attendance and participation today. You've made my job very easy for the last meeting of council, and to wish you, your families and anyone watching on the webcast a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and to hope that it is peaceful, healthy and happy. Thank you. Meeting closed.